Hey everybody, we've just been telling camping stories in case you're wondering what this and this and this means. Fishing and camping and kayaking and all the things. Happy summer, happy Tuesday, and we are Studio R12 Stencils.
Hi.
But we are DIY. I'm Patty.
I'm Carrie.
And we are about DIY, but we use a lot of stencils today. We're not going to talk about, I have nothing stencil on there except for my scrap stencil sheet, which we're now calling kind of an infinity palette paper because you can wash this over and over again, and I'm going to use that to show you some cool tricks. Today we're all about finishes. Finishes. You guys, how you start and how you end is going to make or break your whole project, and you don't have to be a good artist, a good decider of color. You don't have to be a good painter. You don't have to be a good stenciler to do any of these things. This is how you're going to make all of your skills look better. Okay, so this is a big, this is the biggest pro meat and potatoes live I think we've ever done.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's one that's super duper requested.
Super requested, but super easy too.
Yeah.
So I love that everything that you can do to make your project look so more pro is easy to do. It's just about knowing it exists. So we have a big bunch of things on the table that we're going to talk about. You don't need all of them. I'm just going to show you different ones of them, and you can pick and choose. It's like a buffet.
Yeah.
You can be like, I'm this kind of painter. This is what I need. I don't care. I want this.
Yep.
You know, so whatever. And I've been every one of these painters.
Sure.
You know, I've been all the painters.
Yeah.
You know, I have many identities as an artist. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to talk about stencils, but I am.
Oh, good.
So
That was
I want
a little squeaky.
I wanna-
I'm going to just cheers.
Cheers. Happy
We have
Tuesday.
the unmundiest Monday ever, except for Carrie had jury duty, and that was a long
That was
day.
a very long day. I did not get selected, but we were also kind of like biting our fingernails.
Like, are we going to be here?
Not
Yeah.
sure if we were going to be able to, if
Ah.
I was going to be able to be here today. But yes, yesterday was a very long jury duty day, but I think I got to work at 4:30 yesterday.
She was like, I'm here. She missed the root beer float day.
I missed the root beer floats. Everybody was texting me root beer floats while I was in jury duty.
That's so sad. Okay.
But I wanted to talk to you guys about our YouTube channel. If you do not subscribe to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that because we have some amazing videos, things about varnishing and a lot of different projects and tips and tricks and techniques. Last weekend, we released the foil bee project and
faux chalk.
faux chalkboard. Yep. So this is going to show you how to paint a project to look like chalk, but use acrylic paints.
Yeah, and then do you guys know that you do not need to buy chalk paint to chalk on the chalk paint? This is painted to look like chalk, but you do not need to buy special paint. Any matte paint will become, this is hippie noodle blowing because this is the one people get. They'll pay $80 for a thing of chalkboard paint, and all you need is a cheap thing of black or gray or whatever color. You can do pink chalkboard.
Yeah.
Green chalkboard, whatever you want. And then you just prime it just like a regular chalkboard. Google that and wipe it off. And then you go to town and you're good to go. You can chalkboard on every surface.
Yes.
I did a door in my studio.
And what I love about this project is we have this really like chic bee, but this is a very like shabby chic project because we have the wax resist and then the distressing, and then we
There's
have
a lot of meat and potatoes in this one
pretty
too.
bee. Yeah. And so that is already on our YouTube channel. Now this weekend we are releasing our Route 66.
This is a cool project.
This one,
Justin?
This one is rust and grunge and
crackle.
And yes, we crackled. We learned a lot while doing this project as well. But even more than the video this weekend, we have an entire new collection of stencils and surfaces and sets. I think we have like 6 or 8 sets we're releasing. We've been working on this for a long time.
It's been like 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a whole new line of stencils. It is all street signs and road signs and stop signs and Santa Claus and You know, so if you think about the shapes of the stop signs and all that, it is all the things.
Yeah.
And then Route 66, you could paint this on just about anything, but how to apply a rust finish. This is actually like a raised rust. We actually mix it in the video. Steve had a good idea to crackle underneath the black lettering, and that would make it even look a little bit more aged and distressed. It's fun, you guys.
It's super fun.
It's super like mad scientist in your craft room fun
is.
when you come out and you're like, la.
And then we also always love to give nods to things that the guys are going to like.
Yes,
so
exactly.
something that
Mother of 5 guys.
when you are in your craft room for days on end and they're like, what are you doing in there? It's like, I'm making you something.
Yes. I'm learning how to make a man cave sign.
I'm making this.
But you know what? Seriously, the walls where you have the gallery walls and stuff like that in your house, if you've been on a Route 66 drive, I have been, so I'm an Army brat, I have been on the Route 66 20 times from end to end in my life, easily, in the back of the station wagon with the reverse seat, waving at the people in the 70s, okay? So this is who I am, right? And I have done this, so this is like my identity. I've lived this life.
Yeah.
If you have a motorcycler in your family, what a great gift, you know? So like, I think that we forget with crafting and DIY that you can make so many presents. You could buy this for $80, or you could create it for way less.
Right. Well, and without completely spilling the beans, even if you're not a Route 66 person,
This is so cool,
you
yes.
probably have a state route in your town, or maybe you live on one, and you may or may not be able to make your own. So that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, I'm not going to add to it because then I'll spill the whole
Well, there we have so many beans. Maybe
So many beans!
let's
move on.
just make sure you're on the newsletter for Saturday so you can learn all the
So
info.
go to studior12.com. That's studio, the letter R, number 12.com, and there will be a spinning wheel there that will show up because that's irritating. That's how they do it. But it will give you a coupon code, more than likely. And you can do it one time and you'll get one coupon code, but then you'll sign up for the newsletter and then it'll come into your inbox. Google will put it over in your promotions. You can drag it over into your regular inbox if you want to, or you can just let it live over there and go find it when you want it.
Yeah.
So whatever level of interest you have, that's good. But
I already have some questions,
Okay,
so
let's
we're just
answer
going to dive right
Yeah.
in. Amelia asks, does matte paint apply on multiple finished surfaces as chalk paint says it can do?
So are we talking about the same chalk paint that is okay, so I gotta step back just a little bit. Chalk paint, I mean like chalkboard paint. Chalk paint like some of the stencil lines or the sticky stencil lines use what they call a chalk paint.
Right.
I am not sure what that's formulated. I don't like the wet application and the lift off of every one of those things. I think you can, but I don't know the answer to that. So I know they put it on glass a lot, but I think I'd be very curious to know, for those of you who have experience with that, I'm not against it, I just don't like the wet application of it. If I chiseled at any paint on a slick surface, I would be able to pull it off. And I'm wondering if that's true for that. So those of you that have experience, if you can share that with me. I have zero knowledge of all the things. And I'm humble enough to say that I do have a lot of knowledge of a lot of things, but not all the things. So yeah.
Linda asks, would you varnish first before you foil?
Also an interesting question. I would seal under my paint, but I would not varnish before the foil. I would varnish on top of my foil because that's going to just sink everything down. Sometimes different foils can dull, and so that would be where you would take, a scrap board and you would have a little experiment going, and before you get ready, the level of quality that you're going for is going to be what is going to settle whether you make a scrap test board or not. So if you're making something cute to hang on your gallery wall, probably wouldn't make the scrap board. I would probably just go for it and dive in. try to learn from it. On this one I'll do, before, and this one I'll do after. But if I'm giving an epic gift to the recipient of a master's degree that they've always loved Harry Potter sayings, and I wanted to create this thing that I knew they were going to hang forever on their wall, then I'm going to do a test. So you need to know when you need to do a test.
Okay.
Long answers, you guys.
Nope,
I
that's
hope
okay.
you're patient today.
I do have one that came in before we started. From Lori. If my paint has a built-in sealer, do I still need to varnish?
So that question, I actually answered that on a video we shot this morning. I got all the paint off my hand. I was red and white today. Guess what I was painting? I was painting today, and we were talking about if your project was going to be outside in the weather, like tall porch signs, or if you're going to be hanging on maybe a baby's room would be a good version of that as well. If you're going to have a lot of wear and tear, then you're going to want to go ahead and varnish after, no matter what. And then if you are not going to have a lot of wear and tear, I wouldn't seal in most cases, and I wouldn't varnish on top in most cases, because paint does have sealer in it.
All right. I think I'm caught up for now.
Okay, so we're gonna dive in. We have all of these things over here. We're gonna pick and choose, and number one on our little listy poo.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're beginning with
It was
prep.
too much to write out. Number one, so we talk about finishing your project really starts with the prep and the base coat. And so number one is sanding to remove roughness.
Okay, so if you are on a MDF board, then you're gonna be pretty smooth, you're gonna be completely even. You can hear not a lot of roughness to this. I rarely sand this at all. I will sand after I do the first coat if I get a lot of raised up stuff. I'm gonna show you the other side of this. Here, I'm not too bad, but right here I've got this really rough stuff, and then I'm gonna flip this over and show you what we got on the other side. This was a big surprise for us when we got this board. This was part of a tall porch sign. And when we flip it over, I've got this really cool ugly sweater pattern, which is amazing, I just have to say. Carrie, you want to share what we're doing on the website? Can they access that today, or do they need a coupon code?
Oh yeah, so today there is a coupon code for today. Since we're talking about just kind of all things general, not really specific products, we didn't have a specific sale to share with you guys today. So what we did was we made today if you spend $50 on StudioR12.com, you can get $20 off.
Whoa,
so all you have to
yeah.
do is add $50 of products to your cart on StudioR12.com, and then use the code August20 in the checkout, and that's on the very last page, and it will automatically be reduced. So I'll pop that in the comments for you guys too.
Yeah, and I think that in the case of this ugly sweater, I now realize how amazing this is, and you're gonna want this one. We've got some cute things coming up. Okay, but I don't know if we can pick this up. Steve, are you picking that ridge up on this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's a ginormous crack and a ridge that goes straight through this board. Kind of had to change our plan and chop the end off, blah, blah, blah. But want to talk about how you start your project. I'm going to flip it over. If I had that ridge going through here, then I would take something that would fill the cracks. So first I would sand, and sanding that everything's out of place. I always have a 60 grit, and I always have like a 120 grit sandpaper. Okay, so this is really rough, so we would sand that back to knock back. So sometimes there's like little grungy, needly things that are pointed up. So we knock those things back because they're just gonna catch paint, they're gonna feel ugly, they're gonna look ugly. If you want it grungy and persnickety looking, then go ahead and leave it. Totally, that's an artist I've been. Like, let's make this as rough and rumble as we can, more texture, more body, more all the things, no problem. Then after you do it with the 60 grit, sand with the 60, then you go to your 120 grit, and now it's gonna be almost smooth. But say that's really rough and I don't really want it to catch the paint and whatever, then I'm going to fill it with a little bit of filler. And I really love this water putty filler because it's powder. And so I can take out as much as I want, and I can make it as thin or as thick as I want. Carrie's gonna have an affiliate link so that you can take a look at that on Amazon. That's something that we can't carry all of these things. We can't be a hardware store, so we don't. We wanna be, you know, your information store for painting and DIY. Okay, so couple of things. If I wanted to stain my board, I would stain it before sealing it, and I would stain it before doing anything like a filler. Okay, so if you're going to stain your board, you're gonna use a water base. You can also use, you know, something that is a petroleum base like the Minwax, and you can stain that. You're gonna let it dry completely. You're going to use, I'm gonna harp on this for a second. Box is really slick. Okay, so this is a respirator. You want to have one of these. If you're a serious crafter and you're gonna be using sprays and stinky things, and you're gonna be inside, this little thing, a little mask thing you put on, and it has filters. You're not going to kill your lungs this way. We just did a project that used a bunch of sprays and stuff. You can also use like the M95. This is a really nice reason to not COVID use a mask. LOL, but, or get outside and do it when you have good weather and that kind of thing. But then you wanna let things completely dry. And so now you've got it stained. Now we're gonna pretend this is all stained, and then we can seal where we wanna seal. Now, if you don't wanna see the sealant, don't plan on sealing it. Does that make sense? I feel like I have caveats going all over the place here. There's a lot of if that, this, then that kind of things going on. Let me get, I put one in here. I love this little rotating thing right here because I can put the tools that I need right at my hand. That's one that I went through about 800 Amazon products to find something that would sit in this corner right here. Okay, so that is what that looks like on the inside. And then you just take palette knife, put a little bit out, and then you could take a squirt bottle. I've got the ketchup bottle. I'm digging the ketchup bottle. Really, really, really digging that because it'll just do little drops at a time. And then I can mix that up. You can add more powder, add more water, get a balance. Whatever thickness you think you're gonna need. The neat thing about this is you could build this up. Okay, so I've got that nice and pasty. These are little grooves, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more water. I can do a couple drops. May have gone a little far. Yeah, that's perfect. So see how nice that mixed up on this sheet of Mylar? And then we're going to go over here, and then you would just fill that. Pick it up, it's like frosting a cake. Okay, you pick it up and you go straight across and scrape the excess off. What's neat about this is like the color of my pine board. If I put it over here, it would not be the color of this board. But these always come perfect, so you don't usually need that kind of stuff. So you would let that completely dry, and then you're going to sand. I think the name of the game today is sanding. Mm-hmm. I think that you're just gonna sand
and thin.
Sand and thin, sand and thin. So when you have a pine board, you're going to want to feel it. If it feels rough, and mine does not, then I would use, so if you have barnwood, you're probably gonna use your 60. If I have just this board, I'm just gonna give it a couple of knockbacks just to listen to that. Much different, right? Now, what I would not do, on this table right here, I have got 220, I have got 400, and I've got 2,000. And on the sandpaper, they sell them in kits. This is a wet or dry kit, and it's 220, 320, 400. And an interesting thing I want you guys to know about this is they're labeled on the back with this number. So you can see the number on the back, but if you cut them up too small, you will not know what grit they are. And if you don't know what grit they are, then you might be sad. So when you get into the really small things, you either cut them where it shows the number on the back, or you get a Sharpie and you label them while you're cutting them up so you know what they are. And then this one was wet or dry, and it's a 2000, and it's very, very, it has almost like it's gonna sound funny, but like a cat's tongue kind of feel, like it's like soft, but grabbing, you know, and it has that kind of feel to it.
And then we had someone comment that the sanding block, it isn't actually the listing for the sanding block anymore. So it's more of like it's something.
Oh, yay, Amazon.
So,
okay.
so what I'm going to
fix
do
it.
is this afternoon, after we're done, I will share the link for those sandpaper kits, and I will also share a new sanding block link.
Yeah. And on sanding blocks, the ones that I use the most commonly, these are, gosh, I wish I had a scale. I would give them 1 or 2 pounds. They're very substantially heavy. You can use a wood block, and you could wrap your sandpaper around a wood block like a pine board or something like that. Perfectly serviceable. If you're doing a lot of things, and like when I do I have a distressed sign? Oh, I did the wet sanding. So on this project, which you might want to go and find this video because I forgot, I knew what wet sanding was, and this is not wet sanding like wet sanding, this is sanding through wet paint. And so to get this beautiful distressed look, I used my 60 grit with this sanding block and let the weight just kind of dig through it, and it makes the most perfect aged surface. It's amazing. So that's something that you can do with these sanding blocks. With these other grits, I would use them just folded around my finger and just kind of use them lightly that way. I wouldn't get a sanding block for them.
Okay, I have some questions for you. From Bev, when actually we had a couple people ask this, is primer and sealer the same thing?
Primer tends to be, I believe, tinted. If I was buying a primer, I would expect it to be a tinted thing. And sealer is going to be clear usually. And so if you are using a primer, a lot of times you're using it to kind of cut the color behind. Like you might have like a red wall, or you might have a white wall and they sell you a gray primer to prime your wall a gray color so that your red color won't take 85 coats. That's a really classic 2008. Everybody had red walls in their dining room for a while. It was a big deal. So
a follow-up to that from Janice, is there a difference between sealer and varnish?
Yes, so varnish is generally going to be what you put on top of your project, and sealer is going to be, so when you think about your paint and your project, I want you to think of a sandwich. Okay, so you're going to have your sealer or a stain, either or, and stains can seal. So that's like I said, this is like the of all the things, but your stain can seal because it penetrates the wood. The sealer can seal because it penetrates the wood, okay? The paint doesn't penetrate as much as it like grabs. It's a plastic, but it has some sealer in it. So sort of, it's kind of in between. So if you had something super slick, then you might be careful to know that you have maybe a little bit more sealer or an under primer to go under it, like I'm trying to think, what's the paint adhesion medium, but the one that you buy, it's the one for painting things that are slick that, okay, we'll figure it out. Anyway, but there's a big can and we'll do that one. I hate it when I do that. Anyway, so you can use something to prime. So in that case, it's primer, but not maybe colored. So it's so many things, don't know everything. This is the zero thing, right?
Oh, I have more.
Okay.
So
we got this.
We might end up having to make this a multiple part
I may have to drink more.
Because we're still on number 1. Kat said, I did a wood hanger that I sealed, but my blue faded. What did I do wrong?
The blue faded? Hanging outside? Kat, are you hanging outside or not hanging outside?
Okay.
And that is, so sometimes colors can be, they don't have enough pigment. Watercolor people have a lot of problem with this. They have paints without whatever that pigment, do you know what that is? Where they fade in light? I don't know what the name of that is.
I'll
Anyway.
wait until she gets back. And
Yeah,
then we can
but there's
follow up with her.
there's things, some paints have not got strong, whatever the thing is that makes them fade when they hit sunlight. So if you have something hanging in daylight, I mean, literally colorists struggle with this hardcore elusive, I think maybe, but they will fade very quickly. And so you'll have like a beautiful like boat scene, and your red flag will fade because it doesn't have whatever the pigment is that it needs to stay in sunlight.
Okay.
So
Beth asked, after cutting, how do you get that cut surface smooth as before, as not to see the cut?
cutting like cutting the wood.
I
No.
read.
Right. After cutting. Okay, so like this end cut is what I'm assuming that you're talking about.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and so what you're gonna do is you're gonna start knocking off the edge with just your rough, my 60 grit. And a lot of times this will be very rough, but this one is not. And then I'll knock that back, and now I've got it nice and smooth. So now you're gonna wanna seal it. The minute that you seal it, it's all gonna pop back up. It happens every time, but you do wanna start with it sealed, or with it sanded. You seal it with your sealer, it's gonna pop back up, and you're gonna sand it with your lighter grits. And sometimes you may need to sand it or seal it one more time. Okay, so you just kind of have to work at that. If you have a big open grain down there and it's gonna be really rough and you don't like it, then you get out your filler and you can fill that and then give it a coat, let it dry, sand it. So the sanding, this is when I say, at the very beginning I said, these techniques are the easy techniques. You can decide how invested you are in them. So you can go as deep as you want to. You can make it be the perfect project. I'm feeling this right now, and it's getting dry. It's a little sticky still, but I know this is gonna need some sealing, so I'm gonna give it that sealer coat. I might give it a second coat of this if I feel like it needs it, so I can build up to that. A lot of times if you have a deep crack, you wanna build up. But then once I get ready to kind of go, I can decide how rough I wanna be. This side is interesting. I did this product on this. It was a ginormous gouge in my wood, and I do not go to the hardware store and pick out our boards for our 6-foot signs. They do a really, really good job. We have a hardware store right next door to us, and they bring them to us, they deliver them, they unload them, they, blah, blah, blah. They really do a great job. However, this one had a crack and this one had a big gouge. So this one was an exception, but I couldn't even see it when I picked the board to paint it. And so what I did is, instead of making this completely smooth and flattening out the whole area, I went ahead, because I knew I was gonna have all this pattern around it and I wouldn't see it. I went ahead and just filled it to make it not be a ledge, like it's something I wouldn't trip over on a sidewalk. So maybe more of just a slope right there. And it did a really good job, and it was easy to stencil over. And yeah, I really don't mind that roughness on a tall porch sign. If I was doing something, and I'll flip this over, something where you have this guy, you didn't know what I was grabbing, so, but something that has like some precision to it, if I had this, then I would not want this right there. So I would choose my board wisely. But this is MDF, so I don't have to worry about that. But if I was painting this pattern on this, I might not want to have that. But I want to move forward with some examples because I want you guys to see some stuff. Okay, so we've showed the filler. Go ahead.
We showed the filler and the sanding and the filler. Our next one is applying base coats and thin layers.
Okay, so when you are, go this direction here. When you are making your base coats in thin layers. Okay, so I have seen some things. Get your base coat out. You always shake your base coat. Your base coat will separate. And we showed you guys the bottles and the filling of the bottles 2 weeks ago, last week?
Last week.
Yeah, okay, last week. And when you fill these bottles, you want to make sure that you leave some air to be able to shake them. A lot of colors, like my black, we use probably every time, but like this baby blue, I bet you money. You bet your money. Let's spit this out and see. Oh yeah. Did you see that?
They can't see it.
Let me show you. Okay, you're right. It's over there. Okay, so do you see all of this liquid around there? So that's what paint looks like when it's not shook up. So the mediums separate. So that's the sealer and the binders and stuff like that. So you shake this puppy up. So always shake your paint. I feel like that's the basic of the basics. So if you're brand new at this, shake your paint. Okay, so you shake it, and never hit your hand, because guess what you're going to be doing is damaging your hand right there. I tell that story a lot. So look at the difference in that. It's got like almost like an egg yolk look to it. It's nice and perky, and it has like a freshness to it. This one is flat and tired and all of that. So you just need to shake them to incorporate, to emulsify in a way. So paints you don't use all the time, you're going to want to shake every time you use them. Black, I would probably just spit that out. Okay, so I'm glad that I didn't lose any money on that. Because, whoops. Okay, so I'm going to use some black, and it is natural for me just to shake the paint. I'm going to get a little bit more. Okay, so when we get out our foam applicator, and
might need to move some things because I think all of that stuff's in front of your.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Better?
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of people, I've seen this for 30 years that I've been teaching painting, will scoop their paint and they will lay it down, and that's covered, and then they'll just move on. Okay, and then what you get is this ridginess. Can you see it? Okay. That super ridginess. So what you need to do, this is the basic of the basics. So if you are brand new, or if you are experiencing like frustration with how long your paint takes to dry and whatever, you need to go into this and you need to thin it all out. So you're going to get almost an entire base coat out of this board. Just with that initial too much. So you want to totally thin that out. That is going to decrease the amount of time that you need to sand. It's going to decrease the amount of time that your paint dries. Okay, so I got three quarters, how many quarters? 2/3 of a board done with that one base. And then let's just finish that. And notice at my edges, I'm not scraping them, I'm just pouncing them with my brush. The sound effects are completely free. I don't know how many of you are mothers of sons, but if you've ever done a road trip in a car with a pile of boys, there are more sound effects going on in that car than is humanly possible ever in life. Yeah, the kings of sound effects. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside and let this dry, and we're gonna talk about sanding this. If you do thin layers, this will take 2 or 3 thin coats. The polyfoam brush, we show the example of, this is a polyfoam and this is a craft store brush. This brush is only supported about 1 inch away from the tip. Okay, so when you lay this one down, it folds, and that is not good. That spreading thing that I just did there, that is not good. Okay, so this one, and I'm gonna use one of the cleaner ones. This is kind of a trash mess. I'll show you why. This one is almost impossible to push down, so it will spread. It's like a good broom versus a crappy broom. And so this one is actually supported with an extra piece of plastic and a wood thing. This one's wood guy ends right there at the entry. So this is supported all the way through to the tip, and that's why it's resilient. I think they're made out of the same poly stuff, but this one just has the support that it needs. Okay, so next.
Next is number 4, sanding between layers.
Ooh, okay, I like that. I'm going to, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm gonna go back to Mr. Red Board here because this guy's not dry yet. Okay, so What you don't want when you are preparing a surface is you do not want to have something so smooth that nothing can stick to it. You're not trying to make glass until the end. If you want to make glass, do it at the very, very end. But if it's too slick, things won't stick to it. So it's possible to overprocess. And I actually am not going to use this because I don't think it'll be a good example. I'll come back over here. Let me give that a dry. So
Everyone hold your ears. No, Steve's been muting us.
mute me, Steve. It's mute me. All right. Cannot see my holder for that. Okay, so this sounds pretty good. If I was going to sand this, I would, without any pressure, just give it a light little sand and then give it another coat. So if you have some ridges messed up, you had a little ridge, it dried, whatever, just give it a sand and then give it a second base coat. And listen to the two sides. I'd spent no time with this. Okay. Amazing the amount of difference. And what that does is when you hand a present to somebody, when you give a gift, when you hang it on your wall, like the luxuriousness of the fine finish is gonna just really show. And then something, I'm gonna go back to the rusticness, because there's like white paint on that. There's not one darn thing wrong with the raw wood, rustic authenticity of something that's just gnarly looking. I strive very hard to actually bring that into the painting that needs that. So don't be afraid to leave that stuff. This is just when you want something to be elevated. You want a better looking finish. Yeah. So that's what that's for.
All right, so now we're to number 5,
Okay.
stenciling in thin layers to prevent bleeding under.
Okay, so when you stencil, and we are gonna stencil today, so we're going to pull out a pattern stencil. Let's see, we'll use this little guy. We've got a brick pattern stencil. You guys, if you have not checked out, and that coupon code is what again?
If you spend $50, you get $20 off your purchase, and the code is August 20.
Yeah, I will tell you. So this is a very, very, very small selection. Herringbone, big herringbone, stone, checks, leaves. You know, one of our number one stencils is this leaf stencil. It is so handy to have. You do not have to base coat into all these little cracks and crevices. You can layer them. It's really cool. Birds, bats, chicken wire, love me some chickens, cracked glass and crackle. We have so many. There's just not,
and you know,
just gonna stop.
This little sale that we have going on today would be a good time to get one of our pattern stencil sets because you're going to get $20 off of that.
Good idea. Yeah, so you could, we have sets of these, so you can find your sets and do that. Okay, so let me show you the difference between one and the other. When you stencil, I said we were going to use a stencil, I lied. You always tape in two places, so I'm going to lay that up there. I'm going to tape there and then get it squared, tape over here. If I pick up my brush, and I will just use this blue paint because that'll show nicely. If I don't wipe some of that off, okay, so if I don't come over here and offload, and I just go here and I just start driving this underneath, then we're gonna get, damn, why can't I bleed when I need to bleed? That's the most frustrating thing. Sigh. Okay. Sometimes when you just know how to do stuff, you just know how to do stuff, and I just don't know how to bleed. Okay, so we're gonna pick up paint. I'm gonna exaggerate this. Oh my Lanta. Is it that our stencils are the perfect thickness? I think that might be true. Okay, so I still don't think I bled under. Okay, well, we're just not gonna have a bleeding under kind of day, but we will have a texture kind of day. So I'm gonna offshore. If I feather do this and do just a couple of coats, okay, then I'm gonna remove my stencil. Now I got good coverage over here. I didn't get any bleeding, but I did get good coverage. Actually, this looks so much like stone, doesn't it?
It does.
That looks really cool. I think I like that technique. If I'm gonna blow dry, right? So this side, paint, this side's dry, this side is not dry. Okay, so when you do thin coats, you're gonna speed up your drying time completely. And then let me show you the texture part because I think that's super important. I'm not trying to be facetious about the heavy loading. I have seen people teaching how to base coat using these really thick amounts of paint using these applicators, and it is not good. It's not pretty and it's not good, so I want you not to do that. So if I go really heavy, we're gonna put this off to the side, and so we just like pretend I wanna hurry through my project and not base it more than one time. I'm gonna end up with these great big giant ridges. Okay, so I'm gonna chuck that in the water. You always wanna put your brushes straight into the water. When you lift up your stencil and you have thick paint, then you wanna lift straight up. Okay, I'm gonna drop that back down and show you something that you can do with texture that is super fun. It's not quite our lesson, but it's a reason to want texture. So I'm gonna take a palette knife and I'm gonna take modeling paste. It's just like, almost like frosting. And I can tint it with blue if I want to. And so there's times to do the thick thing. And there's times not to do the thick thing. So if you want thick, do thick, but if you don't want thick, control that. Okay, so I'm gonna go on here and I'm just gonna frost that stencil. And then when I lift it, I'll lift it straight up. Whoop. And now I'll probably bleed. Ha! Okay, we're gonna lift straight on up. And so now what we have is we have a good solid coverage, and we have a kind of a not intentional texture kind of thing. If you use a compound like that, you want to take this to the sink and you want to wash it out. So I'm going to dunk this in my bucket of water.
And if you love that faux brick, I actually did a video on that recently.
It's so good.
I will share the link.
It is one of my favorite projects that has ever been done on this channel. I love that project. Okay, so anyway, so those are some ways. So if you do thin, you can hear it's very thin. If you do thick, it's gonna be really hard to dry. And you are gonna end up, if I'm looking at this, I'm ridgy all over this, and then this is intentional ridge. But yeah, you're just gonna end up with some ugly things that you can't control them later. So you wanna do thin coats. Just a couple thin coats will cover you and you're gonna be great.
Okay, all right, so now we're at number 6, which so you've already prepped your project, you have prepped your surface, you have base coated and stenciled and sanded, so now it's time to get into the varnishing.
Oh, varnishing.
So number 6 is applying varnish in the right climate.
Okay, so we all have climates, right? We all have, we've been dealing with record humidity here, like record. We've had rain, have we had rain like every day for like?
It's rained. It feels like it's rained quite a bit.
Yeah, like a lot of rain.
The
We've
stream
had
in front
flooding.
of my house said it's rained quite a bit.
Yeah, my garden tomatoes are this big and they say that it's rained quite a bit as well. And I haven't had to water, which is fabulous. But so if you have rain, then you're gonna have humidity and it's gonna be slowing your drying time and that kind of thing. So you wanna be careful with that. If you're in Arizona, I have taught painting classes in Arizona, and hello ladies if you're watching. But I've taught painting classes there, and like it sucks the moisture out of you when you get off of the airplane. Like it literally is that dry. Like you feel like you have to consume like 8 bottles of water before you get, you know, to the baggage claim. So it's so dry. So don't apply your varnish at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Arizona. Do it at, 9 o'clock at night, or do it first thing in the morning. give your product a chance, you know, like you wouldn't put out a tender seedling in, you know, the hot heat of the day. So just be really careful with that. So, and then what's our next one?
Our next one is number 7, sand between varnish layers with the right sanding tools.
All right, I want to show you something fun. If I can find this, oh, there it is. Okay, number 1, we showed you this trick in another video, which is a Dollar Tree towel. Let me move some things. And when you have something that's painted pretty on this side, you don't want to put it on your scrappy, glitter encrusted, sand grit table. You want to put it on something clean. This is a project, this is what it would look like, and Dustin, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this, but it's really rough, really rough. So I've got like drag marks, very obviously this was on a day that it didn't rain, and it's rough. This is unattractive, and it is not okay, so you need to do something about this. Okay, so what are we going to do? I applied my varnish with a brush, and I'm on a big surface here, okay? So if you have a big surface, what you're gonna do, this is gonna answer the question in a kind of like a in and out way. So say I have my Duraclear varnish. Let me first show you how I sand through it. So say I have a cruddy look. I'm gonna go into one of these sandpapers that I cut up earlier. So this one is my 120. I could go to my 220, but I think that's still too rough. See, it's really grabbing my fingers. So I'm gonna go to 400. I'm gonna fold this, and I'm gonna fold it again. With sandpaper, what I like to do is I like to crimp my edges up, okay? If you do it flat, you're gonna get this little edge and it's gonna be super sharp. So I like it to be bowed towards my finger hold, okay? So I'm gonna get into there, and oh yeah, that already took that down. So listen.
Yeah.
Right there. Oh man, like it just makes it. You're gonna get, if you have a good varnish, you're gonna get a little bit of white powder. If you do not have a good varnish, then you're going to not get that. I don't know what that means. So that's, oh, that's so nice. So first I have to knock back the weirdness that was going on. I'm gonna get halfway, and I want to show you that. Now I could take this a little bit further. I did a project years ago where I varnished an insanely difficult project that was like realistic apples with water drops on them, with leaves with bug bites that had like the garden things that happen when bugs bite on things. I mean, I took all the time in the world on every detail. And then I decided to do an experiment with my varnish and pour it on. And I came up with these giant ridges of doom all over this perfect painted project, and I didn't know what to do. So what I did was what I'm showing you right now, is I went backwards, sanded it down without sanding through the painting, and then reapplied and did some wet sanding and stuff like that. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. So to get this straightened out, we have to do more varnish. I need a little more sanding here. I can feel ridges. When you are sanding to varnish, you don't have to pay attention to your straight up and down with your grain as much as you do when you're sanding to make texture. So when I'm going on like the lake sign that I showed you earlier, if I sand it at an angle or in a circle, then it would make it crazy looking. If I'm impersonating wood, I need to go straight up and down. If I'm just smoothing, then I can do the little circles, okay? So say it's hot and dry. It's very actually warm in here right now. But so what I can do is I can mix a little bit of water in with my water-based varnish. So once again, this little ketchup bottle, I think it's $1 at Walmart. It will do drops You can just be like drop, 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 drop. Okay, so I can just put a little bit of drops out. I can brush mix the water in. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the leveling of the varnish much longer, so it's not going to grab and stick right away. And now, oh, that looks so pretty.
Now, we have a fan going. Is that going to impact anything?
Yeah, the fan is probably not a good idea, so I do have a fan going. So I'm going to, Dustin, can you punch that middle button right there? There we go. Long strokes. I can even pick up a little bit of water if I feel like I need this to go a little bit more. Okay, so that's a really good tip right there. I don't want to end my strokes in the middle of what I'm doing, okay? I want to end them off the board. So that's a really good trick. Okay, so I'm going to go away from this. Another applicator that you can use is you can use the foam applicator. Once again, on a hot day, I would use a little bit of water in with my varnish. It will thin it down just a little bit, but you're going to get a much more even application. Okay, and then I want to take this one away. We'll wash that off later. I found this guy. I think I love this guy. He's just a little foamy thing, and he's got like a spongy, brushy applicator. Yeah. Okay, fresh sheet. The happiest supply chain interruption that we've had has been the palette paper not being available, and it's now like this is our new best friend. They're amazing sheets. Just Mylar palette paper. Okay, good. All right, so this has not been sanded, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the application process with this little guy right here. I'm going to thin that out just a little bit with water, and I'm going to go ahead and brush mix or palette knife mix this because I'm not so sure about loading this up super heavy.
And the thing that she's getting ready to use is called the Handy Painter, and I have a link to share with you.
Yeah, so you just apply that. You can use it with paint, you can use it with varnish, do all the things.
And it's so light.
It's feather light. Okay, so then you can take, if you have a really big sign, and you can just apply a beautiful finish to that. Oh yeah, that is amazing.
That's going to be a game changer for tall porch signs.
Absolutely. I feel like I want to invest in this company, you know? Okay, so by thinning with a little bit of water, that's going to allow any of the little like paint strokey things from the thing to level out. And then like this is a heavier application. It's already leveling, you can see it. This is a thinner one. This is going to dry a little bit faster. But even long strokes is what's going to get you to your destination. Okay, and I really want to show wet sanding, but I need to, I need this to go in a baggie. Okay, let's do that. When you need to keep something from hardening and drying, you're going to take your fold top baggies, and I don't have a sink right here, and I don't have a bucket big enough. So I just don't want to wreck this. So I'm just going to seal it in that baggie, and it's going to keep that wet so that once we get ready to go to lunch, I'll be in the bathroom cleaning out the applicator. Okay, where are we at with questions? We got any questions?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so now we want to talk about, what's our last,
No, you wanted to wet sand, right?
Yeah, I want to wet sand, so I'm going to let this dry. I want to talk about spray varnishes. Okay, so you can spray varnish with 1311 is my favorite matte varnish. Now remember your respirator. Remember, do not do this in a closed area with your kids and all of that kind of stuff. But you want to spray that. You can use this especially for things that have raised bits. So
Can I
say,
take a pause real quick?
Yes.
Because Kat brought up a really good point. If you grab what you just did with that sponge, it did give some overlap over the sides and has made a little bit of a mess.
Okay,
on
so
the sides.
if you did that, so what I would do is I would look at that and I would just wipe that off. Okay? So good catch,
Good catch,
on
Kat.
that. But yes, so you always want to be looking at your edges, especially when you're base coating. It's the same thing with bleeding under and all of that kind of thing. And honestly, shaped edges like this are going to be the ones that do it every time. You're just going to be like, why? So we're going to go here, and important, don't leave your towel that you're using to protect your undersurface on your board when you are ready to do the next thing like sand or any of that stuff, because then it will get dirty and you'll need to chuck it in the wash and get a new towel.
Yeah.
So, but if I was doing something like this really cool round door sign, this is not been sealed and not all the things yet, but you would want to, I would spray something like this. So I would totally take this, shake it, shake it, shake it, do the thing, and then light, I think you're about a foot away, and you overlap spray, put it on a box, on a shrub, that kind of thing, so that something where the overspray won't mark your concrete. Ask me how I know. So, but yeah, you want to overspray, spray this, and then overspray, spray this, and then you'll get it nice